Iran's foreign minister was in the United States, Manhattan specifically, to attend a United Nations event. And he also took some time to speak to the American press about escalating tensions between Iran and the United States. Let's take a look at the first video, which features the foreign minister, Javad Zarif, talking about the United States and its relationship to Saudi Arabia.
The US is sending what's described as a moderate number of forces and some defensive equipment to Saudi Arabia in the wake of this attack. How does Iran interpret that?
Well, I don't think this type of posturing helps. I think what helps would be to end the war in Yemen.
You think it's posturing?
I think it's posturing. I think it's all going the wrong direction in addressing this issue. When the war in Yemen erupted over 4 years ago, we called for a ceasefire, immediate negotiations, humanitarian assistance, and a formation of a broad-based government. Unfortunately, US allies, Saudi Arabia, believed that they could win this war militarily within 4 weeks. That's why they didn't accept our offer to mediate between them and the others, and to bring about a negotiated solution. Now, 4.5 years after that, we see that all that military equipment that the United States provided to Saudi Arabia and the UAE, all the military logistical support that the United States and some other Western countries provided, did not help defeat a group of people, the Yemenis, who are basically cut off from the rest of the world.
So he has more to say about US involvement in Yemen, but I think that the way he handles these interviews are important because I don't know if I can think of any other politician who has calmly and effectively explained to the American people what the United States and its involvement in international wars has led to. How we're not like these innocent sitting ducks that are just trying to spread peace and love throughout the world, and then we're dealing with these evil dictators. No, our actions have led to that region of the world being destabilized. We've killed innocent civilians. We're fighting Saudi Arabia's war for them in Yemen. I like that he's calling these things out. Now, that's not to say that Iran is innocent and they're not guilty of any wrongdoing, but I do think that it's important for Americans to understand what the ramifications are for our own US policy. And luckily, I think voters across the political spectrum are really starting to understand that, which is why even Trump supporters are very much against military action against Iran.
So this is a super serious conversation about whether we're going to start another disastrous war. So allow me to make a silly stylistic point. He talks so softly that for a second there, I thought the anchor was gonna fall asleep.
No, I love it.
Okay, she was like, what, say that again? Okay, but he, as you'll see in the later clips, speaks softly but carries a big stick. Which then immediately made me think of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, who speak softly and carry a fluffy pillow. Okay, but now it's important what he's about to say, so I want to get to that, and then I want to make comments about who's right and wrong in this particular issue and overall context. So let's watch the next clip.
100,000 people have been killed, over 2 million cases of cholera in Yemen. Now, everybody is concerned about an attack on an oil refinery, which based on the latest information that I have, didn't even have a single casualty. 100,000 innocent human beings, not enough, but a refinery is an imminent threat. This is, I mean, I think the moral compass is totally lost.
So the context here is, yes, what Saudi Arabia has done in Yemen is infinitely worse than any bombing of an oil refinery. They're both bad, and we don't know who did the bombing of the oil refinery, but we do know who did the atrocities in Yemen, that's Saudi Arabia, unfortunately with the assistance of the United States of America. By the way, Iran did not attack Iraq, we attacked Iraq. Iran did not attack Afghanistan, we attacked Afghanistan. Same for Somalia and many other smaller incursions, but that were still military in nature and involved bombings. But most importantly, remember, Iran was attacked by Iraq when we were backing Iraq. So this happened when Saddam Hussein was in charge. And you know what Saddam did? with our implicit consent, he used chemical weapons against Iran. So Iran then says, wait, you had your ally attack me with chemical weapons, and you've started endless wars in the Middle East, including the one in Yemen that you're helping the Saudis with, and we're the violent ones? Yep. I mean, that's a bit of a joke. And if you were objective about it, you would see clearly that he is right about that. It doesn't mean that Iran doesn't fund Hezbollah, Hamas, etc. They do. But if you're talking about the more violent actor in the Middle East, it's not remotely close. It's the United States of America.
So for its part, Iran still denies its involvement in allegedly attacking that oil facility in Saudi Arabia. During the same interview, Zarif was asked, okay, well, who do you think did it? And he cited the Houthi rebels who had claimed responsibility. Now, we also know that the Houthi rebels are being supported by Iran. So in my mind, it's basically the same thing, right? But let's put that aside for a second and focus on why we are here in the first place. And it's because of Donald Trump deciding to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal. There was no escalation intention until Trump decided to do that. And so Zarif was asked, well, are you willing to go back to the drawing board, go back to the table and have a discussion and negotiation for a new deal? And here's what he had to say.
You said yourself that you were invited into the Oval Office to meet with President Trump.
Yeah, but to meet him for what? For a photo opportunity? Or to meet him for some substance?
So when the president says he's willing to meet and talk, you're not taking it seriously at all?
We're ready to talk. We're ready to talk, but talk in terms of something that is not going to be valid only for the next 1.5 years or 5.5 years. We need to talk about something that is permanent, that would last. We already have an agreement. We talked. I have talked to what was a United States Secretary of State and a United States Secretary of Energy for hours upon hours of painful negotiations. These were difficult negotiations. It wasn't just a 2-page document that we signed so that we could do another 2-page document.
So you're saying you will not meet or talk or consider diplomatic negotiations with the United States unless the acceptance of that old deal, the JCPOA,
it's not an old
is
deal.
agreed to.
It's a deal that exists now. There is a negotiating room. There is a negotiating table.
I wonder if Zarif would be willing to go back to the drawing board if the outcome is the same deal, but Trump would get to say that he's the one who negotiated this deal as opposed to Obama.
They would probably take that in a second, but that's not what Trump's gonna do. So look, I agree and disagree with him. I disagree with him that about not going to the table at all. As annoying, ridiculous as it is that Trump ripped up the deal, it's a new administration, so you got to deal with that. On the other hand, well, what he's saying is, does America's word mean anything? So we already negotiated this deal with a earlier administration. So do we have to renegotiate every deal every 4 years? And does every country that ever deals with America have to renegotiate every deal every 4 years? Because America's word is supposed to mean something beyond administrations. So that is a very fair point. And so I know they're not gonna give them the same deal. And so will the negotiations be pointless? Very likely. But at the same time, I always am in favor of negotiations over the alternative.
So I disagree with you on that point, because if you put yourself in the shoes of Zarif or a government official in Iran, I mean, why are you gonna give into this? Why are you gonna, you've already gone through that painful process of negotiating a nuclear deal. Their nuclear deal was great. It had the safeguards in place. It had a timeline in place. It had the ability for other countries to go in and confirm that they're following through with their part of the deal. And so if you give into this and you allow for more negotiations and you concede more to the United States, well, then that opens the door for this to happen over and over again.
I hear you, but just going to negotiations doesn't mean you have to concede anything. It just means that you're having those conversations, and what does that do? That delays military action. Look, Iran is also playing a dangerous game here. Now, they didn't start it, Trump started it, but look, it's true that Trump called back the bombing of Iran's facilities 10 minutes before it was set to go. There's a long New York Times article confirming that over the weekend, really interesting read. And so Bolton and Pompeo had convinced him to go to basically to go to war with Iran and to start that war. And he pulled it back. That was a great decision, but it was this close, this close. So if Iran goes to the negotiation table, they could probably stretch it out for a year until the guy's out of office. If they don't go to the negotiation table, the Boltons of the world, even though he himself has gone from the administration, will keep prodding Trump over and over again. You're gonna be weak, you're weak, you better attack them. And what Zarif is saying, which is also a dangerous game, is there is no limited attacks. If you bomb us, it's all out war.
Yeah, let me give you his exact quote. This is according to Politico. Asked if he were confident Iran would avoid a war, Zarif said, quote, "I'm confident that we will not start one, but I'm confident that whoever starts one will not be the one who finishes it." Now, while we might have military capability that's unmatched, remember that Iran's military is not the same as Iraq's, for instance. They have far greater military capability, and we certainly did not win the war in Iraq. We're still involved in that war, and so it would be a disastrous decision for Donald Trump to escalate to the point of military action.
And I'll give you the other quote I was referring to. As Zarif said, that means there won't be a limited war. If Saudi Arabia or the US does strikes inside Iran, he said it will be, quote, an all-out war. And if that's the case, that is disaster for America and for the world. But the stupid neocons have basically, as usual, duped the media into not explaining the full consequences. Iran has enough military capability to do significant damage to our forces in their region, okay? I don't know that they're gonna reach here, but I'd be surprised if they didn't sink several of our ships. And we haven't had a ship sunk in a long time. If they sink an aircraft carrier, this country's gonna go nuts. And then we're gonna be in the middle of a war like you haven't seen, and Iraq war is gonna look like child's play. And so now that's gonna hurt America, it's gonna hurt everybody, but it's also going to devastate Iran. So if I was Iranians, I'd be like, oh, Donald, you want to talk? Yeah, of course, come over, let's have some kubata kebab. Let's take a while, okay, let's have some appetizers, etc. Right, let's take about a year and see how that goes. Avoid the war at all costs. Like what you see? Click the subscribe button below and don't forget to ring the bell to never miss another video from the Young Turks.